Welcome back to another episode of the Fearless Training Raw Knowledge Podcast with your host, as always, myself, Alex Connor, where we talk everything training, nutrition, and lifestyle collectively. And of course, we're back with another talented guest this week, and her name is Laurin Conlin. And for those of you who are not aware of who she is and what she does, a bit of a background about Laurin is that she's the owner and head coach of LoCoFit. So she started Team LoCoFit with the mission to redefine healthy within the fitness industry. As a competitor within the fitness industry, she saw both a lack of education and quality from many coaches. And that is why Team LoCoFit focuses on quality coaching, putting the client's long-term interests first, and taking an educated, evidence-based approach to all matters. And we unpack a lot of those things within this episode as well. And we talk about her approaches, what she's learned, the approaches which are probably more advantageous for a lot of personal trainers, coaches, peers and practitioners alike, and a couple of recommendations and considerations around specifically how to become a better quality coach and some of the idiosyncrasies within that too. Now, Laurin's interest in regards to nutrition started from a very disordered place, as she was anorexic for many years growing up. Her interest then shifted to nutrition and performance as a track and field athlete in high school, to then an amateur bodybuilder. She competed for several years as an NPC Figure competitor before making the switch to the bikini division. In 2014, she won the overall at the NPC Nationals in bikini, earning her professional status. Laurin has competed for several years as an IFBB Bikini pro since. And once again, we do address that. We talk about some of the mindsets from a lot of the female competitors, some of the biggest mistakes, misconceptions about competing, about what you have to do, some of the approaches, and once again, unpacking the most popular topics and questions that I had, and from perspectives of a lot of females that I come in contact with within the gym realms, within the fitness space. And Laurin shares a lot of her experience being in the trenches herself from that place, but also working with a lot of female athletes as well. And she also attended the Florida State University for her undergraduate degree, pursuing a bachelor's in exercise science. And she then went on to complete her master's in exercise science from the University of South Florida with Dr. Bill Campbell in his lab. Now, for those of you nerds amongst us, you may know who Dr. Bill Campbell is and be aware of some of his work. We do touch base on that. And Laurin fills us in on what her master's research focused on and the differing strategies used to affect weight loss and weight regain, and specifically looking at the flexible, quote-unquote, dieting approach. And her research, as she mentions, is one of the first to directly examine this relationship between these two diets too. So we get in and we talk a little bit about that. We talk a lot about the approaches to nutrition from a pragmatic approach and in the realms of real world coaching, and how people are able to create better relationships with nutrition and food, and where you can perhaps take that as a coach, or how perhaps you can approach coaching your clients and creating better behaviors and habits, not only for yourself, but obviously for your clientele too. Females out there listening to this podcast, please turn your ears on for this one. We do touch base on as well some of the differences, if any, between how females may train and males, and also some recommendations and considerations to actually think about of approaching, building an inspiring physique. So make sure you pay attention to this one. As always, team, thank you for your ongoing support. But without further ado, please enjoy my recent conversation with Laurin Conlin. Laurin, welcome to the Fearless Training Raw Knowledge Podcast. I appreciate your time. How are you this afternoon, where you're at, I believe?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on. I know I did a call with somebody in Australia recently, and I totally jacked up the time change. And I called him 12 hours ahead or after. I was like, hey, he's like, hey. Oh, this actually works. It's the wrong time, but it works. I was like, oh my God. So yes, it is afternoon here in Florida. But yes, thank you so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. I'm very excited. Yes.
Absolute pleasure. And yeah, no stress with the time differences. That was me. Like the first couple of times I did podcast, spoiler alert, people don't know, I was like third time lucky. We just kept getting it wrong. Yeah. So now I'm like, okay, here's a picture. Is this your time?
Visual. This is it. Yes.
All right. So let's start off as we always do, Laurin. For people who perhaps are not familiar with you, give us a bit of a background about yourself, who you are, what you do, and more importantly, why you do it.
All right. So my name's Laurin Conlin. If you spell it right, you'll find my name, Laurin. Just kidding. But really, that is how I spell my name. So I'm have my master's in exercise science with Dr. Bill Campbell. I did that at USF, and I did my research primarily around different types of dieting and how that affects weight loss and weight regain. So I became very interested in that whole sector of the research world. I am an IFBB Bikini pro and have been for many years. I'm not actively competing right now, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm retired, but I'm just not currently competing. And then my main, thing that I do every single day is I own Team LoCoFit, which is an online coaching business. And so I have my own clients. I have 3 coaches who work underneath me as well. I travel all around, speak, just do different stuff. So yeah, it's a little bit about me. Kind of try and blend the science and most importantly, the application and the stuff that I learn hands-on with clients.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think that's one of a signature of some of the best coaches now, right? We have that blend of really using the science as a bit of a backbone and a reference point. But at the same time, we use real life hands-on experience, which is really important. And obviously, we're going to delve into that today. Perhaps to set a bit more of a background, Laurin, can you tell us how you grown your business or how you eventuated at Team LoCoFitness? Like, obviously, you've got a couple of people that you work with in your team. Did you start off like one-on-one on the floor? Did you start online coaching? How did it sort of like come to fruition?
Yeah, so I was actually in my undergrad, and at this point in time, I did have a coach myself, and one of my friends was like, hey, I want to coach like you have one. And I was like, all right. And I was like, so like, I'm going to be your online coach. She was actually in person, but we were just doing kind of online communications. So I was my first client, and then she had a friend, and then I had a few people that I met, but I was very focused on school. And undergrad, the program that I was in was very rigorous. So it was pretty much like I took on a handful of people, and that was it. And then kind of just slowly added more and more people. And then once I got to the master's program, is when I started adding a lot more, but still very slow, right? But that's like when I made it like legitimate. Like, oh, I need a name for this thing. I need to have, like an LLC, and I need to have a website. And it was very, very basic for so long. But that was perfect for me. You know what I mean? Like I just had like a handful of people, and it was really no issue. So that's really how I started. I did actually start. I was in school, and I had been competing for a few years, and I was at that point I had just switched my major, but I started out as a dietetics major, eventually switched to exercise science, and then was kind of doing both these things, helping out with research in my undergrad, but also competing. So I had this like kind of a blend still back then, just a little bit less, and but I did start off with the online coaching. Now, earlier on, I had done some in-person stuff as well, but at that point, I wasn't currently doing it. So it was all online, and then pretty much just kind of slowly, maybe I would say like each semester, took on a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then when I graduated from the master's program, I took it full-time, and that's what I've been doing full-time since 2016. So
there you go.
Yeah, so it started in 2013 and then made it full-time in 2016.
There you go. Yeah, it's like a constant evolution, really, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And
that's always funny. New coaches reach out, and they either have a job or they want to think about coaching or whatever. And I'm like, hey, like keep what you're doing and then add a few clients. Like nobody, in my opinion, should just like wake up one day and then try and work with a lot of people. Like that's going to be a disaster. Like you're not going to know. I mean, having an online business is very different than having an in-person business. And when it is your own thing, you have absolutely no structure because you have to create all of that structure. So if you don't know how to handle, client interactions and the systems that you're going to use and the words that you're going to say and what the documents you're going to send out, like that's like a huge problem. So what I just tell people is, hey, start out with a few people, and that might be like perfect. That might be like enough that you like, scratch that itch of like, I want to help people and I want to coach people, because I think people think that they need to like quit what they're doing and like, I'm going to work with hundreds of people. It's like, hey, like what if you work with 5 and you're happy? And then you still have this other thing that you're doing. So it all kind of depends on where you're at in life. But I do think that if you're going to start working with people, it's so important to just like start really, really small, and then kind of build from there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So let me unpack that a little bit more then, because I think the listeners would have a few questions. I know I do. It's kind of like a multifaceted question. So the first one is, when you do start off and you work with those numbers, I think that's a great recommendation, because you don't just wake up, like you said, and be like, cool, I get 50 clients. Like, you got to start somewhere. The first part of the question would be, did most of your growth, or will most of your growth from your experience, come from referrals and recommendations because of a good job that you do with those smaller number of clients, or is it perhaps some marketing? And then secondarily, what are some of the systems and processes that you use? For example, are you someone that started from scratch and created your own spreadsheets? Do you have an app now? Do you use any tools? Do you recommend any? Or do you just like an Excel girl? Like, what's your go?
Yeah. So I'll start with that part. So the systems, it's going to depend on the person, right? And for me, what I found over time was, initially when I started out, I was just sending out like a Word doc, like, hey, here's questions that I'm asking, like you answer it, and here we go. And then I was finding that it was really easy to overlook things in that kind of a setup. So eventually, and this was of course over time, like when I first started, it didn't really matter because I only had a few clients. So it wasn't like I needed this, but now that I have more people, as well as a lot of moving parts in my life and the business, I need to be a lot more organized. So we actually have it's kind of like a combination of like a Word and Excel sheet. And it's basically like there's one tab that's all quantitative and one that's all qualitative. So there's one that has like, okay, macros, averages, fiber, sleep, water, menstrual cycle, weight, like all these things, like all the numbers you need to know, right, for the week. And then the other side of it is all the stuff that I need to know as far as like digestion, sleep, training, mentality, adherence, questions you have, like all this other stuff. And then so I have the questions that I need to know, they answer it, and then I can go in right underneath that and respond back. I actually have tried other like systems. You guys can't see because we're listening to a podcast, but I'm doing air quotes. And because that's, I guess, what I'll call them, right? Like an app or a software. And I just didn't like it. I always found that there was some kind of glitch and something it just didn't jive well with me. And since it's not my own thing, it's impossible to fix in real time, right? So if I'm having an issue, and so say I'm, it's a Wednesday and I have check-ins, but I'm also traveling. Well, I need to be able to like download this information, work on it when I'm on the flight, send it out later. And if you're like in the situation like that where it's, some app or some software, it's not working, I can't do that now. And now I'm already in this place and there's just a lot of stuff. So I didn't like not having control over that. Mm-hmm. So I've decided to stick with that. And so it's kind of like I said, like a Word/Excel sheet, but it is accessible through a lot of different mediums. And then as far as our responses, typically it will be written out that way. And then sometimes we'll send back video messages as well, with a cool system called Loom. It's basically just like a video recorder. Mm-hmm. You can also record the screen as well, as if you need to, which can be useful for clients as well. And then, sometimes a good old phone call is what you need, right? Like something's just not working out, or, so it really needs you, or you're like, hey, like it'd just be easier for us to like talk about this timeline. Let's get on a call. So it just depends on kind of what the client needs, but the bread and butter of the update and all the information that I need is on that huge check-in document. Because a lot of people, like one client might be like, hey, like, well, why can't we just do it this way? Well, it's like, I need all this information from you, which is why I'm asking all these questions, because that will help change my responses. So it is pretty in-depth, but that's what we need to be better coaches to people. So that's kind of what I've done. And that's evolved over time, but yeah, I just can't really get on board with the other stuff. I just haven't found like a perfect system. And I just really like that it's accessible pretty much anytime, anywhere that I need through, the internet. And I like that, like as far as like Google and things like that. So that's that. And as far as the referrals, I would say that yes, doing a better job is going to get you referrals and just positive client feedback in general. So because I do have an online business, a lot of people talk online. They talk particularly on social media. So if somebody is talking about, their journey and what they're doing, and they say something positive, or people are like, oh, hey, like things are looking really great. You're responding so well, who's your coach, et cetera, et cetera. Then they see our team stuff, might follow that, might just follow along. Okay, hey, I found you guys through Instagram, but it really might've been because of a client, but then that's how they found us. And right. So it all kind of goes together as far as the social media world, particularly with online coaching. Mm-hmm. So I would say that yes, doing a good job, you're going to get referrals that way because people are going to speak highly of you. And then they're also going to speak highly about you potentially on like an online social media type network, which will then get people to refer back to your business page and then go to your website.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, Laurin. And No, it's good what you're saying about, I think, that the first part, the systems and the processes, and that you're flexible and that you've created something which is a bit more bespoke. And I think, again, there's not really a right or wrong. People get a little bit pigeonholed, I guess you could say. You know, they go, oh, I've got to use this app, or I've got to do this. But I think, as you said, as you grow and you evolve, you try different things, and you tailor different questions, you know, your check-ins, etc. And it's one of those things where, as you said, if you're traveling, you need something that's reliable and streamlined, that you can just...
Reliable is the word I was looking for that I couldn't think of. That is so key. I need to be able to access it at any time, and it needs to be a reliable source. And that was what was always so frustrating. And that's just going to be what it is if you don't, own the thing. And not even just that, like websites. I mean, I'm sure you have something that like, hey, I need this little thing on my website done. It takes like 3 days. And it's like, I don't know how to do it, so I got to rely on somebody else to do it. So this just kind of keeps everything like in-house. It's a little better.
Yeah. I've actually just upgraded my systems myself, and I'm still learning them from the strength guys who've helped me out. But again, it's something where, like you said, you can take complete control of it. You know, you can look at applications and or using third-party apps or building your own, which is just like, wow, that's extremely expensive. It's like, even for people at the top of the game, it's like, no. And then you need a programmer every time you want to change something. It's like,
exactly. No. That's the issue.
And I think this is where, and I don't know if you have this problem, Laurin, but, you speak to clients and clients go, oh, why don't you get your application, or why don't you do this? And it's like, okay, well, I like your way of thinking, but let me explain it to you mechanistically now. And you'll get it, because we're not cookie cutter. Like, we're not just be like, here's a meal plan. Here's like a little, 4 exercises that I give to everyone. It's you need, like you said, you need to be able to tailor these things, and you need to be able to get that individualistic feedback and then be able to respond. And I don't know whether, I guess, depending on the athlete, you do like a weekly, bi-weekly or monthly check-in. You need X amount of information. I think that does surprise people. But again, it goes back to what I think you were getting at with what you do, providing, more qualitative, in-depth, evidence-based service. It's like, well, we need to know about these things. No one's ever asked me about my sleep. I'm like, oh, it's really important, guys,
Super important. And that's the difference between, there's different levels to coaching. And if I'm going to say, hey, we're doing like weekly premium coaching, like that's what you're going to get. Like, I need all this information from you. If somebody wants to, pay for an app and have the same workouts or the same meal plan as somebody else, then that's great. Like, that's a completely different situation, right? So there's all different like levels for people. And I think it's important as a business owner to be able to offer some things to different levels. Like, we do have some things that are less, I would say, invasive than weekly custom coaching, right? But that's kind of our bread and butter, and that's what people come to us for. So I focus a little bit of our attention on other stuff that we can offer. But the main thing that we're doing is, hey, we're good at this kind of coaching. So that's what we do.
Yeah, which makes sense. That's great. I've got a big question next. Before we get into like the real meat and potatoes, shall we say, it would be doing myself and everyone else a disservice if I didn't ask this. And you've probably been asked this many times, and I know you spoke about it on another podcast, Laurin, but can you, if we can, handpick the main key points and learnings that you took away from working with, Dr. Bill Campbell, or your time when you were in the lab and you were doing your, like, cutting your teeth? Obviously, we're all still learning, but when you were sort of new, you were fresh, you were doing, your masters, etc. Like, are there some, maybe it's like a couple of things that always stick on your mind, like, this was a big learning curve for me, and perhaps like extrapolate that to how you now apply that?
Mm-hmm. So I'll give 2 answers. So the best thing that I learned from Dr. Campbell, that I still interact with him very frequently. Like, I live in the same city as I did my master's, and I go and try and see him, wouldn't say monthly, but close to it, right? Like, always, I stay involved with the lab and then just go and see him. The best thing that I ever learned from him is that he always is talking to people like he can learn from them. So the first time I met him, I was just blown away by the fact that it seemed like this guy wants to, like, this guy cares, but this guy wants to like ask me questions. Like, he's generally like a curious person, but he also like knows that you have something to offer, and he acts like that with every single person that he meets. He doesn't care who you are, what you know, like, he knows that he can learn something from you, and he's very open to that, which is amazing. And a lot of people who are in his position do not act like that. Somebody who's been in academia for that many years is very, like, I'll say prestigious. He would never say that, but I will say that. Has a very well-known lab. A lot of people just don't act like that. And he is not only incredibly humble, but is always trying to learn from other people. So it's something that I really took away from just interacting with him was like, man, like this is how Campbell talks to everybody. And I just love it. So that's one thing that was a huge takeaway, like on a personal level. And then as far as a research level, man. So that was very interesting. It was a really long study. It was a very detailed study. But the biggest thing that I took away from it, because I went into it not necessarily with like, oh, we should do one thing or the other. But at this time, we came up with the idea in 2014 and then executed it in 2015. So at this point, like this was kind of when like 2013, 2014, 2015 was like meal plans are the devil. Like anybody who does that is like a trash coach, and flexible dieting for the win. We're going to have Pop-Tarts every, like that was like the heyday for that. Right. And so we were like, hey, like there was no study looking at a flexible diet as far as tracking macros, which there still hasn't been a head-on study like that. Meal plans versus macros was essentially what my diet was. And so half the group was meal plan, half the group was macros, and then we followed them for a caloric deficit, and then we followed them afterwards for a post-diet period, because I found a bunch of interesting research, and also just from a personal level, coaching and competing after a diet, we all know, is kind of the hardest part. And I was wondering, did how we diet affect our weight regain? Now, of course, I understand that it was a short-term study. It wasn't like the end-all be-all, but we wanted to kind of just see some changes. And then I also stumbled upon this really interesting line of research. This would be a two-pronged answer, which is basically you're looking at dietary restraint as either flexible or rigid. And in the literature, it's literally called flexible and rigid. So the rigid would be like, okay, black and white thinking, very dichotomous, very like, oh, these are forbidden foods, this is off limits. And of course, there was a lot more, disordered eating out of that, right? So then when you see the flexible side of it, you see like, okay, hey, this is a more moderate, flexible approach. People can plan a little bit better, less impulsivity with food, and they have a general more control over what they eat. So in my mind, we said, okay, hey, this is kind of like flexible dieting. It's a flexible restraint, flexible diet. So what I learned first and foremost from the study was a lot of things, but the main takeaway was that people's level of food education was the most important thing that determined their success of the diet and the post-diet. So what I mean by that is people who came into the dieting scenario, because the only real recommendation, oh my goodness, not recommendations. Oh gosh. Like the criteria. Why can I not think of this word?
Like the guidelines?
Kind of. Basically, you had to have been resistance training beforehand. Like you weren't completely new.
Like prerequisites.
Kind of. Oh my God, I cannot think of the word. This is so embarrassing.
It always happens at the best of times.
Yeah, I'll be like falling asleep later, like, damn it, this was the word.
Yeah.
Anyways, so basically they had to be, within a certain age and, resistance training, etc. But they didn't say like, hey, you have to be like a master dieter, right? Like, so some people had experience, other people were very new, like, what is a carb? Is butter a carb? Like those kind of people, right? So we randomly had to assign people to groups. Of course, you can't bias that. So we paired them by fat mass, randomly chose them. Okay, bam, good to go. So no baseline differences. Well, some people who were put into the meal plan group, that was great. They had no food education. The meal plan was awesome. Best thing that ever happened to them during the diet and after the diet. Likewise, people who had been tracking macros before and had more food education got to the meal plan and were kind of like, I don't like this sucks. Like, I don't need this. Then likewise, people who had been doing kind of flexible dieting, tracking, were like, oh, this is cool. Like if they were put in the macro group, this is fine. No big differences. The people who had no food education who got put into the flexible dieting group it was a shitstorm. Like they were just like, what's going on? This is terrible. Like I'm a fish out of water. So there was an inverse relationship based on, of course, like your food education and your baseline level. So I really came away from that realizing like, hey, macros isn't for everybody and meal plans aren't the devil. And we had to really realize that context is really important for of course, this person in the subject, but in real life, clients. You couldn't really, with research, you can't coach people, right? So I couldn't give people who were struggling like more advice than other people, but I could just drill them with questions because of course I don't want to bias the research, but I want to like know what's going on. So I can just ask them like, hey, how's this going? Blah, blah, blah. And yeah, people were like loving the meal plan. And I was like, oh my God, this is so different than what I expected. And it was because they didn't know what to eat before. And they were like, finally, I know what to eat. I understand portions better. I'm good to go. And then afterwards we saw no issues at all. They were like, yeah, feeling good. And then likewise, people who had no food education, you said, hey, here are these 3 numbers. Make sure you track them every day. They were fish out of water, freaking out, like not sure what to do. So I realized like, wow, like this is, and then they didn't really learn anything either. So afterwards they were like, well, I'm just going to go back to eating what I was because I don't really understand this either. So what I learned is that, okay, there's this continuum of what we need, we need to offer people, and saying that one thing is better than the other is really bad advice. Really bad advice. I wouldn't give you, hey, a meal plan. Like, you know what? I know you've been doing this for a while, but like, you know what? I don't trust you. So, you know what, Alex, we're going to put you on a meal plan. No, that wouldn't make sense. Right. Mm-hmm. But then likewise, if say, your mom, which I don't know if she knows anything about nutrition, was kind of just like, I've read a few magazines, I've seen some books, like I know some stuff about nutrition, but I don't really know what a macro is, or I don't really want to use a food scale. Well, that would be really poor to be like, you know what, macros are the best, mom. I read it online. So you have to say like, hey, take a logical approach. Well, maybe it's better for me to give you a food suggestion list, and here is some, portion size and that kind of stuff. So that was really my main takeaway from the research. But then now, other second caveat, years later, we come full circle, and it's so interesting how this works. But like I said in the beginning, rigid and flexible restraint, right? And when initially when I was reading that, I thought flexible restraint must mean flexible dieting. And then I realized over the past 3 years or 4 years that, or almost 5, oh my God, that's crazy. Like 4.5 years.
2020.
I'm like 30 years ago I did my research. No,
back in my day.
Yeah, back in the day. So I'm realizing that, wow, tracking macros can look a lot like a meal plan when applied wrong. This is actually something that me and Eric Helms have talked about a lot, because he's been very vocal about this, and I've been very vocal about this now. And I've kind of almost like trying to make it a mission, and feel terrible that people that I worked with years ago, I was trying to put into this track macros box, and it wasn't necessary, because I thought I was doing them a service by saying, hey, this is a flexible diet. No, it wasn't. That's just as rigid to somebody who takes it the wrong way. So tracking macros to the gram every single day for the rest of your life looks a lot like a meal plan looks. And we see a lot of the same psychosomatic things that happen. So I was like, oh my gosh, I had this revelation. And we finally wrote up, the paper, because, me and Campbell both just got really busy. Life happened. So we were finally, finishing kind of the edits. Had some help with some other people in the lab, and then he's like, hey, I want you to make sure that you like this. And I was like, listen, I have to add some really important sentences at the end, because I need to add this context. It doesn't change our research at all, but it changes how I say, okay, flexible dieting, right? And, what does this mean? Because again, I was looking at it as very much like flexible restraint is flexible dieting, aka tracking macros, but it's not. So a flexible diet can include, tracking macros, but it can also include tracking habits. It can also include, some intuitive aspects, and being just very educated with your food. So that was a kind of a new, I guess called a revelation or whatever. That sounds a little dramatic, but new finding or thought process that I've had over the past year, that now implementing that with clients has been the biggest game changer for me. Yeah.
No, there's a lot there, and that's really good. And it is an important point, but it is a big question, and it's really important. I'm just going to go over and kind of highlight and reiterate a couple of those points. That again, there is that swing where it was meal plans, and then it was like meal plans around, now it's flexible dieting. And everyone's like, look how much ice cream I can eat and stay shredded, and it's like, okay, cool. And you almost see sometimes in the fitness industry, you still see that evolution. I've been there. We've all done it. And then you kind of go back to just like Whole Foods, and just, again, it's just eating. Like it's about, I was speaking to a client yesterday, and I was talking to him about not living in a box. And I said, look, I said, variety is key.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, he was living.
Hey man, don't be homeless.
He's living in this cardboard box. I'm like, dude, you can do better.
I believe in you.
Yeah. So, everyone goes, well, I said, here's the thing, right? So you got pescatarian, vegan. I said, no, these are just diets, they're descriptions, but I said, unless you're doing it from a dietary perspective where you just can't tolerate certain foods, or it's an ethical thing, I said, you're really always losing out to a degree. Like, you can still do it, you can still make it happen, you can still gain muscle, you can still lose fat. But if you are someone who is open to eating absolutely everything, and you understand these basic principles, then, I mean, from a nutrition standpoint of getting like health, getting in all your nutrients, you're going to have way more variety, right? I eat a bit of fish, I eat red meat, I eat white meat, I eat vegetables, I eat seafood. It's like, that's like the best you can do. And I think the irony is sometimes especially the old school fitness people, bodybuilders, whatever, they are, if anything, some of the people who are more predisposed to nutrient deficiencies because of like, I just eat these foods all the time. And I'm like, dude, you ever had a carrot instead of an apple? Like, because it was like, I just have this fruit, this vegetable, and then it's like, or they'll do that and then they go on a bender once a week. And I'm like, okay, well that's not gonna end well. And it's about, again, like you said, and this is really interesting, you've done some research, and I know there's a lot more to be done. As you said, I spoke to Eric about it too. He's doing some great stuff, like yourself. Dr. Campbell's doing some great stuff. I think there's a lot of other practitioners now doing some great stuff. Danny Lennon, he's out there interviewing some of the best people and trying to coagulate this whole, well, hey, it doesn't have to be a meal plan. This is a tool. It can be used as and when to give someone some structure, something to lean on, but it's not forever. And then the same with the macros. It's not just like, well, here's some numbers. It's like, okay, well, some people, again, like obviously there's a bit of pushback. And let me turn this into another question before we go out of it. And it is, what are some of the things that you do and techniques and tools, or the language that you have conversations with people when people push back in terms of even, addressing nutrition, or even, tracking, or even making an effort? For example, I'm sort of, as I'm learning, I'm building like my processes more and more. And I'm going, right, I see how some people really need some structure initially. And we're not even going to track. And I tell people, like, just forget it. Like, we're not even going to do it. I just want you to create a food. I just want to know what you eat. I just want to know what you eat. And then we can pick one thing that's, achievable, and we'll start with that. And then every week, let's do another thing. And something that's realistic. And this is the thing, right? It takes time. People are like, are you going to get results straight away? It's like, well, it might take us 2 months to get into a realm where we're actually giving the body the right energy, depending on your behaviors, your habits, etc. So that's to give a bit of context. What are some of the strategies that you use? And I guess for some of your most toughest clients, where you're working with someone and you're like, wow, it's not that you're eating bad. It's just you really don't want to, track, or you really don't want to like eat at least 3 meals a day or get some protein in. You get those clients who are like, they're in those gray areas. Again, use some real life examples. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
It's a big question.
Typically, I deal with the other end of the spectrum when people are fighting back because they are very rigid. And I do work with a lot of competitors, or just a lot of more kind of advanced people who I need to say, hey, like, let's take a little step back and maybe just have 2 untracked meals this week. Like, that's totally fine. And that's where I get the biggest pushback, actually. But we actually did create literally an ebook just on this, because we were finding that the more people that we bring on, there is people who, some people think that they're more advanced than they really are. And then we were like, my coaches were struggling with just basic stuff. And I was like, hey, we need to like put something together. You know what I mean? Because this keeps happening. So essentially it's called The Foundations of Food Education. And it's this whole thing where we kind of just detail all the important things to start, right? And really the biggest thing that I like to say is like, hey, let's exactly like you said, making a few foundational habits that are going to be really impactful, because everybody wants to start like, oh, I want to do keto. Oh, I'm going to be a vegan now. It's like, hey, let's just have protein 3 times a day and like drink a gallon of water, and you'll be off in a way better place. Right. But it's, it's kind of really convincing people that is the most important step. And I just kind of always refer it back to like, hey, like, you've been going in circles for so long, right? Like, you've maybe been yo-yo dieting, or maybe you've been making a little bit of progress and taking some steps back. Like, I want to give you something that you'll be able to do forever. And you can actually apply this to no matter what period of life that you're in. And I think when you break it down to like, hey, not even like in the book, we say like 4 foundational habits that we would like people to start doing. But even if we can do like 1, just start with 1. And then you can feel, because people want to feel competent. If you give people too many things and then they fail, they're going to feel really bad. And then they're not going to want to continue. So you do have to have high enough goals to make them excited, right? Like, you can't just be like, we might get some progress. Like, nobody wants to hear that. You have to kind of like promise a little bit of something, right? And like kind of have something for people to look forward to. But you also need to make sure that it's not overwhelming. So it's like, hey, like, this is the things that we need to work on. I'm usually really honest. And I find that some people doesn't jive with. But hey, that's how I work. And most people really appreciate that because they're like, you know what? I've never been told this before, and I've always been given the runaround or this or that, and I really appreciate it. So just being honest with people, like, hey, these are the, the things that you're going to need to work on. But this week, we're going to just work on this one. And then you kind of start there, and then they build up stuff. And, it's basically just reverse engineering the problems. Hey, I wanted you to eat 3 protein meals this week. Why didn't you? And then they say, oh, because of this, this, and this. And then you can say, hey, here are my solutions to that, right? Use this meal prep company, use this protein powder, prep stuff the night before. You can set up little things instead of just being like, why didn't you eat your protein? Hello, it's so easy. That's not helpful to anybody, right? It's figuring out the issues, reverse engineering them, and then saying, hey, okay, now let's apply that this week. So that's really the most important thing that I think, especially with working with people who are first starting out and they really just need to develop some key habits because no matter what diet you put them on, no matter anything you want to do, it's always going to crumble if there's not a good foundation. So not to be super cheesy with foundation analogies, but really that is actually true. And then at the other end of the spectrum too, when people are very rigid and they have been doing this for a long time and they want make the people who want to make everything perfect, right? Like the optimal people, right? It's like, hey, like we can be still really, really good. And I need you to be able to because what ends up happening is that the macros become a crutch, right? Tracking becomes a crutch and then they can't operate without it. And then if you say, hey, you're in a situation, somebody doesn't know what kind of food, what's in their food exactly. They're like, oh, couldn't eat, couldn't do it. Or they just completely derail. You're like, no. That's not the goal of this, right? Like you just estimate and then we just move on, right? And that's something that I think for a while didn't really recognize because I would intuitively do that almost. Even during diets. I mean, I travel a lot, so I eat out quite often. And even when I'm prepping for competitions, I'm still doing that and getting very, very lean. So of course it's possible to eat out a lot and not be mindful of what you're eating, but you totally can, right? And so I was just kind of finding that people were a lot more rigid with stuff. And I was like, ooh, this isn't good. And that's where that kind of rigid mindset comes in and that rigid restraint. And you kind of have to say, hey, we're going to track macros, most days, but then we're going to take a day where instead of 4 meals that you normally eat 3 of the same meals earlier, and then just have dinner, go out and eat dinner. And then guess what? Trial by fire, because some people just really, really struggle with it. Other people are like, hey, it was great. You're like, cool, let's do it again this week. Other people, it's a catastrophe. And guess what? We learn from that. We reverse engineer the problems, and then we go from there. So no matter what end of the spectrum you're on, you have to figure out and you have to ask the right questions to say, hey, why didn't this happen? Or what went wrong? Because then you can actually fix it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. And that makes sense. And it does seem that people are on that's a cool shaker, by the way.
Oh.
For people watching on YouTube, Darth Vader.
The best.
And it's black, and I'm all about all black. It's cliche, but it's better anyway.
No, it's literally matte black with Darth Vader. Like you can't get any better than that. I mean,
exact keyword matte black. Yes.
I got the coolest, totally derailing us. I got the coolest custom black on black Converse because everybody knows those are the best.
Oh yeah.
High tops with Vader with his arms crossed, and it's this super just scary. Oh my god! I was like, I have to buy these. They were so expensive. It was some company in Ireland. I was like, whatever, I don't care. I'm buying it on I don't know, one of those weird sites, like Etsy or some. I don't know,
oh yeah.
But totally worth the $120, even though I know those shoes are $50. But I got it, so I'm gonna wear those way too much. I already know.
Yeah, you can be a badass in the gym with those. It's all right. I think we can be friends. This is good.
Yeah. You're allowed to come to Australia. It's fine. You like Darth Vader.
It's that's good. It's Darth Vader. Yep, check. Oh, black mat. Yeah, check.
Yeah.
This is good. Yeah. And macros. Not too rigid, flexible. Good information. I like it. This is good. Ticking the boxes so far. But no, it is true in terms of you've got people on both ends of the spectrum, and I agree. And like you said, Laurin, you're working with, I am, as you alluded to, more comp prep athletes. And again, they have this it's the same with programming. I say to people, here's your program. Alex, I got a bit mad, didn't hit my numbers. I'm like, doesn't matter. What do you mean? I'm like, remember, this is a guide. It's not a gospel. Yeah. So sometimes you got to take that program, you got to throw it out the window. It's there as a guide, because people, so you get people to start following, And you sort of have these conversations and you're just like, look, there is a time where, the numbers are going to change. You're not going to be able to hit the numbers the same with nutrition. And then when you take that away from someone, you think, and they panic. And perhaps, and I think this is going to be a nice springboard into the next question about your relationships with food and how that's evolved and what you've taken from that. And now I think how that probably affects and helps you empathize and connect with people with your coaching. But I remember the first time I started tracking and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Started seeing results because I was one of those people who I just couldn't get enough food in. So I started measuring it. I started manipulating. I was like, okay, I'm not eating enough food. Now I'm tracking what I'm, training. My volume's going up. I'm increasing over time. I was learning all the basics. I'm like, wow. I did a couple of years of that. And then it was like, oh, we're going on holiday. Oh shit. Like, I was like,
what do I do?
Panic stations. Yeah. I was like, I'm gonna lose all my gains or I'm gonna get fat. And it was so funny. And I remember just, thinking like, well, dude, what did you do before? Like, you know how to eat food. And it's almost as if we've just put this like intuitive, this behavior in the back of our mind that we forget, like eat when you're hungry. I mean, think about all the practice you've had. You've been looking, weighing, eating these. You already know subconsciously kind of what to eat. And even if you're in a different country, it's the same. And you often move more. And I think you probably see this with clients all the time, and they often come back and half the time they can be leaner, or even if they put on a bit of body weight, it's like, it's not fat. And they're like, oh, I feel better. And I'm like, yeah, you've had a bit of time away, you've de-stressed, etc. And I think that's a big fear. So I don't know if you want to add on to that before we move on to the next question, if you've got anything to say about that. But.
Yeah, I think that is one of the negatives that I have seen with people who overly track or rely on tracking instead of any kind of habits, because then when that gets pulled away, they no longer feel like they know how to eat. And that's really the wrong message that tracking macros, in my opinion, should be sending. I want people to track because I want them to be consistent and I want them to reach their goals. I don't want them to use it as a crutch and forget how to eat and be paralyzed when they're outside of the situation. The whole goal of it originally was to be like, hey, there's this food or there's this other one, and you get to choose because of how they work into your numbers, right? And so I think that that's really important. And yeah, when people travel and you go on vacation, like it's so simple. But and people often forget too, like you're in charge of all that. Like you're literally in charge of what you eat and what you don't eat. And if you make the decision to say, hey, I'm going to go to Mexico for 3 days and drink all the tequila and eat chips and guac, have at it. Like, don't feel bad about that, right? If you're 3 weeks out from a bodybuilding competition, I wouldn't be doing that. But if you're just in a normal place in your life, go have that, right? And then come back and say, you know what, I accept that. I'm going to get back on my program. I'm going to train really hard and we're good. What happens, the issue, I think, is that people get in a situation like that and they're like, oh, I can't track this. I don't know what to do. And then they're like, oh, well, fuck it. I'm going to just eat all this stuff. And then now they're going to it with like a negative situation. Literally, they've even done stuff where hormones are released differently based on how you think of food. Like if you look at this as like a good thing, like, hey, I'm going to take 3 days to just kind of chill and eat what I want. Your body doesn't respond the same way as if you're like, oh, panic mode. What do I do? Oh, I'm just going to eat. I'm just going to be at the bar all day. Like then your body's like, whoa, what's going on? Whereas if you just taken those 3 days to kind of just like relax and mentally you're like approaching food differently. It's so interesting how our bodies are very connected. Like everything is like so intertwined, like every system. So like if you're going into something with like a really, really negative perception about it, it's just not going to end as well as if you said, hey, I'm going to take these 3 days to enjoy myself.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think there's a lot going on there with the psyche,
so much.
The psychological aspect. You can make yourself, to a degree, ill, look better, feel better. A lot of it is mental, and it comes down again to not having this black and white on and off approach. And I think
so hard, but.
Well, it's true. And I think the argument here is, and I was speaking to another gentleman last night, he's been training for years. He's an older gentleman, great physique, great rig. And, he told me, he's like, oh, I'm going to have a bit of a diet after Christmas. And I was like, yeah, cool, man. Like, why? He's like, oh, I just want to trim up. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool, man. And, came and had a chat to me yesterday. I'm doing my work on my laptop. And I said, oh, are you still doing a bit of a mini cut? And he's like, oh, he says, I am and I'm not. Like, he's like, I'm like on the diet or I'm off the diet. I'm like, oh, you're very extreme. He's like, yeah, man. He's like, I'm all in or I'm all out. He's like, and he's telling me, he's like, I don't even have like yolks with my like eggs. And I was just like, oh God. I was like, it's like, oh God, there's a lot.
Sorry about it.
I'm like, you could still eat a yolk and like still work that into your calories. But I'm like, I'm not even going to go there. Like you can see he was set in his ways. And, it obviously it works for him. But I just think, wow, like, how easy would it be if he knew like he could, and then he mentioned like, oh, because I went out last night, so I'm not on the diet. I'm like, oh, you could still make that work. But again, it's that mindset.
It's also like nobody's suggesting that that's the best approach, right? Like I'm not saying like, go out and like get super drunk all the time and eat cheeseburgers, like just fit in your macro. Like, no, nobody's suggesting that that's a good idea or that's a healthy diet. But if you do that every once in a while and don't hate yourself because of it, and then you move forward and continue to be on plan 90% of the time, you're doing really good. You know what I mean? So that's, I think, where the issue is. And people just cause themselves so much psychological distress when they think that way. And that's really one of the biggest things that I have to focus on, with coaching.
And I think it comes back to balance, Laurin. I think, and again, it's actually easier to be an extremist. It's easy to go all in or all out. But when you say to someone, you know what, like you can still kind of, and like you said, there's a time and a place. It all comes down, I think, context.
Always.
Made a good example before. If you have a show coming up, then you know what? I think a good analogy, it's not my own, but I do use it, is like the path, right? So on the off season or when we don't have a definitive goal where we need to be.
Where'd you get that from?
We walked a wider path. I don't know where I got this one from. I did spend that long.
They're going to say like stay on the path. I'm like, okay. Like we've all, I'm like a huge Jocko fan, so.
I was gonna say, are you gonna wait? Listen to a lot of Jocko. Maybe some
on the path. Yeah, subconsciously you're on the path.
It could have been, but I don't know. I don't know if this one was. It might have been Danny Lennon and a mix of.
Okay.
I don't know. I know. But like, it's like you have a wider path, right?
Oh.
And then you get to like, I think this is different. This is Jacko's more like on the So
just
and
stay on the path.
You get to like, you can kind of wander over to the sides. Like it's a lot wider. You can like dance and play on the path, but in comp prep, that path is very narrow, and it's like you can't really veer off the side too much because we have a definitive goal. And then again, it's about being I guess mature enough or having enough education to go, you know what, I'm probably not going to get the family size pizza a week before my comp because, I only have this many calories. I'm going to use them on these more whole foods. And obviously my calorie threshold is a little bit lower. But then also at the same time, it's like, hey, I don't have a definitive goal. Maybe, yes, I'm in shape and I'm in good, but that one pizza or having a little bit of flexibility for a day or a couple of days to go on a holiday, it's not really gonna affect me. And then I think just to really hammer that home from my perspective or where I like to come from with clients, and you mentioned this, is own it. Like if you do it, the worst thing you do, I'm like, girl, if you're gonna have 3, espresso martinis, you enjoy them. Don't be getting them and being like, I didn't, and then worrying about it. I'm like, it's worse. I'm like, you better get them and you enjoy them. Like, get your money's worth, girl. And then we get back in the gym next week, But then also, I think it's not having that reactive mentality where someone will go, I had a Pop-Tart, I had a whole bar of chocolate, and now it's like I'm doing like I equated how many calories it was, and I've done this in cardio. I'm like, no, that's a slippery slope. Mm-hmm. So let's use this to springboard to the next question, which is if you could, Laurin, share your relationship with nutrition, perhaps some of the pitfalls you faced, how that's evolved, and again, some of those maybe revelations that you've learned to now have a better relationship with food, with nutrition, and again, how maybe that's helped you connect with others and help them create the same.
Yeah, so I started out like many people with an eating disorder that's pretty standard in the industry, but a lot of people deal with that, right? And it was at a very young age. But I did, deal with that for many years, and then, continued just to be very active and kind of that whole deal, like kind of just very healthy, and it was not disordered anymore, but just very into that. And then once I got to college, I was like, hey, maybe I'll study dietetics. That's why somebody gets paid to look at food all day. Cool. Like, that's what I'll do. And then I realized that wasn't necessarily for me, that specific path, but in any case, so it did start out more in a disordered place, and then I kind of started learning more. And then when I first started out doing all this, like this was, of course, like, the magazines, and, it was just completely different. Like social media was not really a thing. If it was, I certainly wasn't on it. And I would still go to, like websites where like sponsored athletes that like I liked would like post stuff, and, like that kind of thing. Like you would just be into that, right? That's where I got a lot of the information, right? Obviously school, but also that kind of stuff. And again, trying to like always blend them. And, started out not really knowing much, like, oh, hey, I'm going to like do a photo shoot. I guess I'll do the Stairmaster and eat fish. Like, like stuff that everybody just does. Right.
And rice cakes, fish and rice cakes.
Yeah. Which I love me some rice cakes, not like tilapia. Just don't buy tilapia, please. Like just don't buy it. Disgusting. But, nobody put me on this crazy plan or anything. It was just something that I just created. And it was the norm, right? Like there was this many people who did bodybuilding at the school that I went to. And they all were doing that, right? So you just kind of learn, and then, and then you kind of learn, okay, what am I learning at school? And then what am I learning from these people? And then you kind of just start blending it. And then you get surrounded by more educated people. And then I eventually met like people who actually knew what they were doing, and then learned from them, but still was, when I first started out, the flexible dieting, thing was pretty popular. So before that I would, measure stuff out, eat portions, right? So like, oh, oatmeal is half a cup. That's a portion. I'm going to eat half a cup, right? Like there was no other like less, more, like I just ate it, right? Half a cup of quinoa is a serving. I'm going to have that. Like that was just kind of how I thought about stuff. And then, the macro thing was like, whoa, what is this? It was just crazy. Like, of course, everybody's just, when you're first starting out, like it's like mind blowing, right? It's like 2013. Anyway, so that kind of evolves. And, and then I realized that and this was not really the tracking's fault. This was 100% like my relationship with competing. But I would basically like diet for like really, really long time. Diet's over. Okay, now I'm going to eat whatever. Oh, I'm kind of gained a little too much weight. I'll do another show because I want to compete. And I could do that for a few years because my body was pretty resilient, but you can only do that for so many years. And then your body says, no, we're done. So I did that for 2 years straight. And then I basically had such a prolonged nagging injury that I had to just take 1 year completely off, but it was multiple years just competing nonstop, like 2013 all the way through 2016. So like 4 years of that. And then last prep was probably my best prep, kind of air quotes again. Cause preps are all hard, but it was very long. And I was pretty much, basically the issue was that I was like stage lean for like 3 months because I did a bunch of shows. So that was very hard on my body. I'm not naturally a very lean person. I'm kind of like more of a normal, just kind of person. But, in any case, so that took me a really long time to recover from. Like it probably took me at least a year to feel like normal again. And now like 16 months removed, like I feel like, okay, like for the first time, I can't remember the last time I haven't dieted in this long, you know what I mean? And if I wanted to say to myself, like, it doesn't matter what happens to my body, what I look like, I'm just not doing this because I'm not ready to do it, right? If I'm not ready to commit to something like that, then I'm just going to eat. I'm going to train. And that's what I'm doing. And that's what I've been doing. And ironically now, I'm to the point now where it's like, yeah, like I still eat a lot of food because I have a big appetite. But I can be like, oh, it's an hour later than I would normally eat and I'm okay. Or like, oh, I ate this and like, now I'm full and I'm going to stop. And I know that sounds really crazy to maybe people listening, but that's not something that's normal when you compete all the time and your body is so dysregulated. Even if you've gained a lot of weight back. So a lot of competitors would be like, well, I've already gained weight. Why am I still feeling like this? It's a time thing. 100% it is a time thing. And it took me literally a year to feel normal on kind of all fronts again. And now to actually feel like at 16 months later, like I feel pretty good. And it's absolutely insane. And I kind of thought that was never going to happen again because of how I haven't felt like this in really like a long time, like since I can remember, you know what I mean? And so it's really cool that that's kind of come full circle. And I've realized that in order to, be a better coach to my clients, I have to really push them to get uncomfortable. So like, hey, it might be uncomfortable to, take some steps back with your tracking, or hey, it might be uncomfortable to take 3 months longer in your off season to what you thought you needed, but it might be necessary. And it's so vital to really take time. If you're pushing your body to extremes, you need to take extreme measures on the off end as well.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, for competitors, we can all relate. For non-competitors, it can be a hard concept to get your head around that,
or even just food focus. If you're not a competitor, the food focus is still there if you're always off and on dieting.
Yes. Yeah, correct.
So
Just took the words out of my mouth.
Okay.
That's what I was going to say. That was good. That's
so rude. I'm just jumping all in.
No, it's good. It's great minds think alike. I was actually going to say food focus is it's so surreal. I always say to people, like you don't know what hungry is until you've done comp prep. Like,
yeah,
I eat a lot of food too. My mom's Italian. We'll use that as an excuse, whatever. You must have some Italian in you too, because you always talk with your hands. It's good.
Oh, yeah. I am like the hand talker of the year. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, you're doing well. It's good for people who are watching. Get on YouTube and watch this. It's great. You get way more out of it, right? What is it? Like 80% of communication, it's body language. I'm the same. Everyone's like, "What do you?" I said, if I said you tied my hands behind my back, I tell you, I was useless.
Don't know how to talk. Yeah.
But yeah, it's so true. And I guess to make this a bit more specific, there's a lot of females who go through this, on the regular, like you said, even if they're not competing, they have this struggle with, they think that they are getting fat, and it's like, wow, like you're not, some of the females I work with myself, I'm like, look, you are nowhere near fat. Hey, look, like you're not as lean as you were, but being where you were isn't going to be optimal for growth, isn't going to be optimal for health. If you are now, not thinking about food all the time and you're almost like full, it's like, well, that's kind of a good thing. You're not so food focused anymore. You can actually just be normal and focus on other things.
Life. Yeah.
And then there's obviously all the other hormonal, adaptations that come with that. I know a lot of females, I knew one female, she didn't have her menstrual cycle for like 2 years. I was like, what? Like 2 years after, I'm like, what damage was done? Like, I mean, I know it can take a while to come back, but 2 years, wow, that was a long, long time. This girl, she maintains naturally a really, really lean physique, but obviously going into comp prep is like, wow, super, super lean. But then I think sometimes the normality of what someone will eat is actually still restricted, and they don't realize it because they were on like, say, super restriction. Now they're on like minimal restrictions. Like you're still restricting yourself. You don't realize it. And you're always talking to me about food. You're always thinking about food. Like that tells me you're not recovered.
Yeah.
If you're always, I mean, look, even I love food no matter what, but if you can't if it's always going back to that subject of food, it's like, there's probably, you still need to recover.
Yes. And the hormonal stuff is very different for everybody. Like there's that's just a huge different topic, but it's very, very variable from person to person. But one of the biggest things that I really just see is kind of like people's stress response, and the clients who are either have high negative stress perceptions or just have high life stressors or traumas that they haven't dealt with and things like that. They can gain body fat, they can be eating a lot of food, but if they don't handle that stuff, they're not going to be in a place, physiologically where their body feels safe to have a menstrual cycle. So that's a big, I know a lot of people focus on like the quantitative stuff, but there is the whole other aspect of like how somebody mentally is handling things. And if that becomes something that's like really, tough to deal with, of course, that's when you have to refer out. But it is something that is very impactful, is what I see over and over again. Like the people who do lose their cycle and have it for a long time. Sometimes there's other stuff going on, but a lot of times it's that.
For sure. So Laurin, what advice would you give to first of all, females who are competing every year and not giving their body enough of a rest, and then also perhaps females who are on the opposite side, they're on the outside looking in, they want to compete, they have a lot of misconceptions, they're not really sure where to go about it. Some recommendations I always give is get a damn good coach and make sure you know what you're in for, and perhaps don't compete as soon as you think. Like go to these competitions kind of desensitized, because I feel almost saddened because I speak to a lot of females and I can see what slope they're going to go down, and I'm like, oh God, And you can just see it's going to be eating disorder highway, because like already the language that they're speaking and what they think they need to do to get where they want to go. And I'm like, wow, no, like, where are you getting this information from? But again, we know, right? It's social media. It's a lot of the glossy magazine covers. It's perhaps their best friend who competed with so-and-so and she looks great. But I'm like, yeah, but she doesn't feel great. And like, she doesn't really look that great. You know, like you don't say that, but like, cause it's that level, it's that whole like, oh, you need to kill yourself. It's like comp prep is hard. 100%. You've talked about that. It's going to be, but you can make it a lot harder. There's definitely, you know, a better way to do things. And I think it's like, this is, you know, why I do this is why I do this podcast, because I'm trying to get through to people and expose people to people like yourself who can give better information. So if people do decide to, you know, even if they just want to lose some pounds and create a better relationship with food, or they want to step on stage, perhaps they have a better starting point. So what would your advice or recommendations be for the females listening, and even the guys, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely going to take longer than you think is the best thing that I can give, the best advice I can give to anybody who's starting out. So whether it's the time it takes to build the adequate amount of muscle, whether it's the time it takes to diet, or really just like feel comfortable as a competitor, like it all takes longer than you probably think. So if I tell somebody like, hey, you're thinking right now you want to do a show and you're a first time competitor, reverse that about a year. It's January 8th. Next year, January 8th, you probably get to be able to get on stage. At least a 6-month off season, at least a 6-month diet. And we're just talking like, I don't even know this person, but just a general rule. If somebody could actually do that for a first time competitor, they'd be in such a better position. What do most people do? Hey, I want to do a show. They've been kind of haphazardly training. They do a 12-week diet. They get on stage. Now they get hooked because competing is very like, I mean, it'd be interesting to see like what kind of like the, like, what happens, like the brain chemistry, but like, I mean, it is like a literal dopamine hit for people, you know, and now some people don't have that response, but a lot of people do. And that's why you see people compete because they feel like they need it now. And it's really, that's what's really, really heartbreaking to me. And it's easy to get caught up in that particularly. And I know this happens in all the divisions, but I really think it's mostly in the bikini division, just because it's been touted as the attainable look. But if you're really looking at the girls who are doing well, that is not attainable, nor is it easy to come across. Now, some people, hey, yeah, they walk around that they are, you know, we'll call them genetic freaks, right? Like they get to the top pretty quickly and with maybe less efforts than some other people, right? I have clients who will literally kill themselves for years, who will never look like certain people who have done this for a year. Just the reality. That's called genetics. But most people are going to be putting a lot of work and a lot of time into looking like what your favorite top bikini Olympian looks like. And people think that it's this easy thing because it's always been touted as that. Like with bikini division, you throw on a bikini, you look good. Not anymore. 2011, yeah. Now, not so much. So even when I turned pro in 2014 to now, it's a completely different ballgame. I mean, it is, I can't even express how different it is. And that's 5 years. So it's always evolving. And I really just want people to understand, if you want to do this, it's going to take a long time, and be patient with it. This is also something that is not, should not be looked at as just like I want to lose some weight. Why don't I do a show? I just feel like that doesn't really end well. You have to be competitive in nature, and you have to understand what you're getting yourself into. If you're setting the weight loss goal and also are interested in competing and doing this long term, cool, go for it. If you just want to lose weight, book a photo shoot. Like, I understand why people do it, because they want to have this really high goal for themselves, and I think it's great. And I don't want people to be discouraged from competing, but I want them to understand what they could potentially fall into. Whereas if you just say like, hey, I want to get in really, really good shape, I'm going to set this photo shoot for this date, 12, 16 weeks away. And then maybe if I really like this, I can, do a show maybe next year or something like that. Be much better situation. Because although this is not competitive in the way that like, other sports are competitive, it still is. And it does require a lot of effort, 24/7. So it's so interesting. And the subjective side of the sport really plays into this, which is what I think people are not expecting, because they think that because they worked hard, they're going to do well. And that does not guarantee that you're going to do well at all. I've worked really hard, like killed myself on some preps, and I've done worse. Nobody cares what you did for your prep. All they care is the 10 seconds that they see. So you going into it with that expectation, that's where people get really let down, because now they're being judged by strangers who they're deeming don't look as good as some other person. And now you feel really, really bad and really, really small. And now you have this crazy body that's like, I'm starving. I don't know what's going on. I have this weird relationship with food. And then it becomes this cycle of like, well, if I work harder next time, I'll do better. And then, do that for a few years and see where you're at. It's not good. It is not a good place. And it's really sad.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. It's a vicious cycle, and it's the whole carrot on the stick. And I think, girls, they're in there, and I get it, guys do it too, but they're constantly, I'm not going to blame any one thing, because I don't think any problem usually is just one thing. It might have a root cause, but it usually has multiple, areas to address. And, social media is definitely one. They're there, they're looking. Well, I mean, one, you see the picture, you don't know even what that person's going through. You don't know if it's Photoshop. You don't know if how long they've been training, their genetics, all these other things. But then, you say one thing and then they hook it, genetics. It's like, no, that's one thing. Like, that's not everything. I'm just saying that's one thing,
this person's obviously taking steroids. You're like, what? No.
You're like, no, there's some
I've been training for 10 years.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, there's another female telling me the other day, she goes, my friend told me that she's been taking steroids to get into this condition. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she's like, I'm really surprised. And I'm like, well, I'm like, it does happen, like, I'm like, in the Gold Coast here, it's a popular place. Everyone wants to look good. I'm like, it's the most commonly used drug. Yeah. But then she's like, but she's female. I'm like, not all anabolics or performance-enhancing drugs are designed to get you like real jacked. There's different types. Not that that's my area of expertise, but it is rife. And I think, a lot of girls are very green to that. And I've seen a lot of girls go through you see them over a couple of years, and then you see them now and they are just like, I am just burned out. I am done. And then they come out with like, I was actually using this. I was actually using that. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Like, I saw you were dying inside. Like, I could see the smile, but I could see what was going on in here. Like, you get to a point where you can see through people and you're like, what you're doing is not sustainable. But then at the same time, the double-edged sword is, wow, if you actually worked, again, instead of harder, because it doesn't matter. It's not enough to work hard these days. It's not enough to work hard in the workforce, at a relationship. You have to work smarter. You have to educate yourself to be able to get to that point where you may realize a better potential, but also to enjoy that relationship. And it shocks me as well, Laurin, to see high-level competitors. I understand how and why some of them can do it, but I still, from what I've learned, from what I can ascertain from the knowledge, the literature, and experience, I do not think competing every year is wise. I just don't. I don't care if you got to defend your title. I don't care. Like, especially as a natural athlete, if you want to make some progress, if you want to get everything 120% in your body, you got to be taking some off season. Like, how can you expect to, and obviously you get to a point where it might just be, I retain more muscle mass on this prep than my last one, because there was no way I was going to gain any muscle mass if you've been like training maybe for 20 years. But, age, muscle maturity, perhaps, you look a little bit more defined, you get a little bit leaner, whatever it might be. There's always an improvement, but everyone's looking at that big picture. Like, I'm going to put on a couple of kilos. I'm like, you ain't going to put on a couple of kilos of muscle, man. Like, just face it. And then I think when everyone actually leans down, and this goes back to what you were saying about females, and I really like this point that you made about, hey, okay, you want to compete? Well, let's do 12 months of like actually training intelligently. You probably are not as muscular as you think if you get as lean as you think, even if it's just like, hey, let's do a mini cut. And you're like, oh, I'm a string bean. Yeah. Now let's train intelligently. Oh shit. Like, I am gaining, like I am so much stronger. I'm like, yeah, now you still got so many gains on the table. The stage isn't going anywhere. Take your time. I say this to guys and girls all the time. I'm like, take 12 months training intelligently. I'm like, and this is no disrespect, but I'm like, based on, where your body's at, where your strength is at, where your mindset is at, there is a chance that there's a lot more progress that you can make initially before you step. And you'll be in such a better place when you can stand up there and you can look like an athlete, because it's for you. Forget the 5 people. Mate, you don't even know those people. It's just subjective. It could be different 5 people. They could have different breakfast, different lunch. They could like this color of this bikini. They could like this. They might have a fucking thing with that guy or whatever it is. Who gives a shit? If you look good, people have got eyes, and you got to do it for you. Then no matter what happens, it doesn't matter on the stage, because you did it for you. And then, like you said, you have a plan, you have a strategy to reverse out of there. And then bodybuilding, competing, whatever you show you do, you like, this is a good experience, rather than, oh, that was shit. Competing is not good.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, maybe it was just the experience you had, or no one again prepared you for what it was actually like without as you said, Laurin, importantly, discouraging people. It's just about being real and saying, hey, look, not trying to put you off, but this is the reality of it, which people don't really talk about. You just see the nice pictures and the trophies and the photo shoots, but that's a very small part of it.
The smallest. And I get being competitive, and I get wanting to do it. And if you're in a position where you're doing pretty well, I get wanting to, stay in it and say, hey, maybe I got a few good years of this. I mean, it's not like you can do this forever, but if you're really in a position where you're like, you know what, I might be able to do something with this for a few years, I totally get going for it. Then I also get, have to, like we talked about, you're going to drink espresso martinis, you're going to have chips and guac. You better be ready for the consequences, is all I'm saying. It's probably not ideal. And is that what I did? Yeah. And then guess what? Now I'm here, and now I'm in a way better place. But right away, I was not. You know what I mean? It just happens, and it's what you have to go through. And nobody really gets out. Is what I'm trying to say to people. Some clients, they do one bad diet cycle, and it's years of bad trying to get back on track. And then some people can do, all intents and purposes, a really shit plan for like 5 years, and you're like, they're going to stop, and then it one day just hits, and nobody ever really gets out without doing things intelligently.
Yeah, true. Agreed. Definitely. All right. So let's move on to now, like we talked about a little bit of the nutrition part. And again, there's so much more to unpack. There is, right? It's ever evolving. But let's talk about now more about the training, because again, there's a lot of misconceptions in this space as well. I'd love to address, and again, I know we've already talked about this off camera a little bit, female training and what your opinion is on how females should approach training. Perhaps you can make it bespoke to just females who want to look better. Perhaps categorize, is there a difference between training for bikini, for figure, etc.? And is there anything specifically that you recommend or program for females that they should be doing that is different to males, apart from anything that's obvious? And some of the protocols that you prescribe.
Yeah. So pretty much I'll be really straightforward with training. You should be training hard. And the thing that a lot of women think is that they need to train very differently than men. And that's just not true. Of course, you're going to need to train depending on your goals. So that's going to be different sport to sport, depending on what you're doing, right? If you're doing powerlifting or you're doing bodybuilding, 2 different types of training. Can they overlap? Yes. But are you going to specialize? Of course. But in general, as far as like men and women differences, the biggest differences come down to body parts that you need trained. But just because you need bigger glutes and hamstrings does not mean that you should literally do kickbacks and hamstring curls. You need to be doing compound lifts as well. Now, does that mean that when you do compound lifts, you need to be a world record squatter? No. So I think some people hear that and they're like, well, I don't want to do that. You're like, well, do you goblet squat? Do you plate squat? Do you belt squat? Do you, there's so many options at your front squat. Like, you don't have to load 300 pounds in your back. Like, we can do so many other things that are still squatting motion, right? And it's something that I think is just so interesting to me, because I've always trained, when I started training with guys, like bodybuilding guys, and that's what I did. And that was just normal to me. So when people would be like, oh, here's the girls section. Oh, what the fuck are you talking about? Girls section. I was, what am I gonna do over there? Like, it's just, I never even thought of that as like a thing, right? Like, hey, we're just working out, right? So, but I've come to realize that there are people who really get worried about that, or they think it needs to be so different, right? But it really doesn't. It just really depends on your goals and whatever you need. So as far as things that, again, the divisions are really, if you're talking about physique sports, that's going to be different. If you're just like want to look good, just hit everything, honestly, just like hit everything. Wow. And you're going to look so much better. Now, if you are in, bikini versus figure, right? Okay. Figure is going to need a little bit more back than bikini, or a little bit more quads than bikini, right? So of course there's body parts that you're going to need to hit more. As far as like, I would say figure's pretty like a balanced look, whereas, bikini is definitely heavier on like glutes, ham, shoulders, but you still need to train other things as well. Mm-hmm. So that's really like my big thing with training is like, you need to still train hard, depending on, no matter what you want to do. If you want to step on stage, you want to look good, you still need to train hard and not be afraid to do that. The weights are all relative. And if squatting 90 pounds is hard for you, or squatting 300 pounds is hard for you, you need to do that. And not suggesting that people go out and get hurt or anything, but it needs to be hard based on your effort. And actually my boyfriend does most of the programming for my clients on our team, because he's really, really good at it. And something that we really just try and encourage for people is like just training. Like, these girls will come in and they're doing, 6 days a week, just like tons of stuff. And it's like, you're not recovering. You're not really pushing that either. So let's work it back. Most of our clients train 4 days a week, actually. Some 5, like the occasional like light 5th day. But a lot of people just can't recover from that. Unless you're like a professional athlete who has nothing else going on, you're really not going to be able to train that much and recover. Now, some people are different, of course. But if you're really being honest and say, hey, if I take 4 days out of this week and I crush my lifts, then I do some, light activity, cardio, neat, whatever you want to do on the other days, and you actually focus on recovery, you're probably going to grow a lot better than if you're just doing all this, like, just stuff in the gym. I'll just say it like that. Yeah, which that's, people debate about that. I didn't want to say that word, but because now it has a different meaning, right? Yeah. You're just doing stuff in the gym, right? And you're not really getting response from it. So, try dialing it back, but really, really pushing the actual session or sessions, and you'll probably see a lot more growth. And not to say that, you need to train 4 days and then just like lay on the couch the other days. Absolutely not. Still be active, still do things. You can do like prehab work. You can do some activity. You can do some light cardio. But just going in there and then just running your face into the ground is the number one thing that we see people doing, particularly mostly women. And they're not really seeing any progress. So that's the 2 big things. Hey, you don't need to train different than a guy. Your body, I guess 3, your splits and your focus will be very dependent on if you are competing or you're just, what division you're in, or if you're just trying to, look good and look better. But then lastly, don't think that you just have to go in. More is not always better. Better is better. Better reps, better quality, and better recovery is actually going to lead to more growth.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, exactly.
You're like, what I've been saying.
Pretty much, mic drop. It's good. It is. And I think, again, to sort of highlight a couple of points that you made, Laurin, we see, and I know a lot of people are going to relate to this, trainers listening, coaches listening, athletes listening, people who lift, you see these big lists sometimes of like their training days and their exercises. And I know that sometimes I send programs to them like, is this it? And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, I've only got 4 or 5 exercises today. I'm like, yep. And they're like, okay. I'm like, but let me show you now how to do them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, yes. Okay. Because
and again, 3 sets of 12 does not mean like, you're just bagging it.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, you got to warm up. Like, you got to really get after it. And then now you're like, okay, now I'm ready. I'm going to push these 3 sets of 12. Like, this isn't just like my warm up sets. Yeah. That's a big thing I see too with people. They just, I got through this in 30 minutes. You're like, really? Well, you didn't try very hard. Yeah.
I always say the devil is in the details, right? It's not what we do, it's how we do. It's the whole, this is kind of the second part. So the whole, like, please give me a meal plan. I will give you money. Give me a meal plan. I'm like, no, I don't even know who you are. Like, it doesn't work. And it's the same with it. Can you just like write me a program? Like, I'm like, dude, you're probably doing all the exercises or a lot of them that I would prescribe. Bar squats, but it's not what you do. It's like, I have to show you how to squat. I have to show you how to bench. I have to show you how to warm up, how to actually activate muscle groups. And people go, what do you mean? What do you mean? I'm like, well, 9 times out of 10, if I show you, or, you actually do a squat, a bench, a press, a pull properly, and you understand some basic biomechanics, you understand how to activate the muscle groups, you will feel muscle groups you never knew you had. Therefore, you will start to already develop in a different way. You'll be able to move more loads. You'll be able to, learn the skill of strength. That blows people's mind. Like, what? Strength is a skill? I'm like, yeah, man. Like, it's not just about lifting heavy weight. Yeah. And I think, like you said, with the females, it's like, okay, like, don't kill yourself. Like, you gotta, you're not going for a 1 RM here, but you should feel worked. You should be able to go in and not have to do 10 exercises where you're doing, I don't know about you, but the Smith machine's like worth its weight in gold. I see people getting in there on weird angles, pushing that bar. I'm like, how do you even do that? Like, that's impressive. Or you see the stair climber with the kickback with the legs. It's like, oh yeah, you can do an hour's worth of that apparently twice a day. And then it's all about the hip thrust, right? It's all about the hip thrust. But like you said, it doesn't have to be. I think it comes down to not making things overcomplicated. Like, we are human. Yes, anatomy is slightly different, but we respond the same to strength training. So really, why should it be any different? And this is kind of another question, or leading into the question, Laurin, how you maybe preface this with your clients. I know for me, the biggest question is, but Alex, I don't want to get big and jacked. I'm like, okay, you won't. I'm like, hormonally, you're different. You don't have the same, androgen receptors. You don't have the same testosterone levels. But unless you're taking performance enhancing drugs, and even then, you got to train fucking hard. you're not going to be getting huge. And again, this is just, and you can sort of add and maybe give me your opinion on this, but I always sort of say, look, but what will happen is all of those wonderful things that you want, right? You say you want to be toned, you want to be tight, you want to be lifted. So really, there's only two variables here in body recomposition. And we're looking at lean muscle mass, lean tissue, right? And then we're looking at fat mass. And if we manipulate those variables, you're going to look how you want to look. And it's going to create that illusion. So really, the thing that you are avoiding is the very thing that's going to get you what you want. Now, how ironic is that? By, again, and not just doing loads of cardio. Again, nothing wrong with cardio. Everyone's like, Alex, you hate cardio. I'm like, I don't. It's a tool. I just think it's overused and people are wasting their time. They're in the gym like twice a day doing all this cardio. I'm like, if you just lift weights, girl, you're going to have that booty. You're going to have those legs. You're going to have the upper body too. And you're not going to look like a bodybuilder. So Laurin, please give me your take on that.
A lot of it comes down to, there are some people who are just going to be thicker muscularly, who are not going to be like a separated, right?
Sure.
There's some people who are just a little bit denser. And then there's some people who are always just going to be kind of that more like lean, long muscle, right? You can't necessarily change that. But what you can change is, where you have muscle and body fat. So I think a lot of people, they might feel like they're kind of bigger, right? Or bigger. And then you diet down and then they're like, oh, I just look like soft and like skinny. And it's like, yeah, you need more muscle. So I think that's also coming back to, it doesn't matter what kind of goal you have, whether you're like just starting out in the gym or you're doing a competition. That's why kind of having that foundation of actually lifting. And you'll notice people always say, oh, body recomp, which is basically like you're training hard and now you look better at the same weight. And that happens all the time. That happens particularly when people have taken time off. Like I know for me, again, just kind of referring back to like this year, I haven't really changed my weight that much compared to earlier in the year, but I look a lot different. I haven't had, body comp done to know, but I can just know that visually, like I look and feel different, which is all that I really care about, right? Like at the end of the day, like that is what matters. So sometimes it's just like a time factor of, okay, how long have you been training? Promise you're not going to get super bulky and we can diet down, but you're going to notice mostly that you're just going to get kind of that like deflated look because you don't have the muscle that you really need for that look. So I thankfully, at least over here, maybe I'm just talking to the right people, but I feel like that is like way less than it used to be. Maybe that's just like my positive perception of it, but I feel like it's a lot less than it used to be. And like, gyms over here, like, it used to be like there'd be a handful of girls, but now it's like everyone's training. So that's super cool. That it's like way more of just kind of like the norm now, where I feel like it wasn't back even, a few years ago. And like when I started with my undergrad, like it was not like 2010, like 10 years ago, it was like, that was not normal to see. Like there would be like maybe a few girls on the weight floor, but they'd be like in the girl section. Right. And then now, like you go to gyms and it's pretty mixed bag. Maybe that's just where I'm at. I don't know. But I know that in general, it's dramatically changed over here.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a shift. I agree. There's a lot more girls who are like, they're open to weights now. You see a lot of girls like they're in the squat, they're having a go at it. I think the issue is that's paired with favoritizing exercises. Like it's way too much just hip thrusts or, just some banded lunges. Or then it's like, but then it's that, and then it's like an hour of cardio. I'm like, it's like, okay, this is better. Okay, you're doing something, but still it's this, it's almost this, like, I've got to do the cardio and then I've got to drink the protein shake within 30 minutes. Like that is like, it's got to be done. And it's like, wow, if you were to take that time that you spent here and put it into here, because I always say to people, like, let's look at adaptation, like look at different athletes, look at the demands of their sport, look at their specificity, their body types, genetics, factored in a direct correlation to, the stress and stimuli put on your body. So I said, if you're kind of on the treadmill all the time, are you really going to look like the bikini athlete or the strength-based athlete that you want to look like? Take that time. You're not going to get fat, right? You're still going to be, if you're eating the right amount of nutrition, and once again, you're expending calories in the gym. Yes, it's not as much as cardio. It's different, right? You're going to use different energy systems. Like, you're better to put that energy into here and forget cardio, because that, again, in and of itself is becoming a pain in the ass for you. you see people just get exhausted over the months, and you can just see them dying. And I'm like, just don't do any of it, you know? And it's so hard for them to just stop. And
hey, just go for like a walk
process
after dinner, and then, you know, train harder.
Yeah.
You know,
like, do something more fun.
Forget about that. Yeah. And I mean, cardio is great. I think that it can be a really awesome tool, and especially if people are training for stuff like that and it does work out. But when you feel like you have to do it because it's the only way to get those adaptations, it's like there is something that could potentially be better. Of course, different ends of the spectrum. If somebody's never worked out a day in their life, yeah, you probably need to do some cardio. Like, you haven't done anything. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about people who are a little bit more advanced, right, or like at a normal body comp, way different conversation. Yeah, so start lifting, guys, is really what we're trying to say.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
Go start lifting.
Yes. Is there anything, I guess, to before we move on, that you do differently, or that you would have as a recommendation or a consideration for females, if anything? Or if not, there's nothing. But if there is,
I can't think of anything right now that I didn't already list. Again, probably think about it later. But honestly, like what I talked about is really kind of like the bread and butter of like what we do. And then just getting, you know, feedback from people. Like, what do you need? What do you need changed? And don't be afraid to actually train hard.
Right. Done. No, I like it. That's really good. Listen to it, guys. Apply it. So before we move into some more like rapid fire quick questions to round it out, there's a couple more kind of like, I think, key questions I want to ask. Whatever comes to mind based around, the first one is, what are the most common mistakes that you see or that you encounter on a regular basis, and how do you combat them?
So that loops back to the rushing the process. So that's really the biggest thing, is that people think like, oh, hey, like, can we do this for 3 months? It's like, well, we can, but it's not going to be ideal. Like I really need like a year of your time in order to actually make like a lasting change. And if you want this to be, because the whole point of coaching, like I have some clients that I've worked with for years, and that's amazing. Sometimes it's off and on for years, sometimes it's straight through with years, and that might be a different situation. But the goal, especially for somebody who's a Gen Pop client, I'm not trying to work with them forever. Like that would be doing a poor job if they felt like they needed me. If they want to have me, that's amazing. I have plenty of clients who they want the accountability and they want the, you know, weekly changes, and they want all that. And like, it's not that they use me as a crutch. Like they're very much their own person, but they like having that, right? Versus somebody who's like, I don't know what to do, I need someone. That's a whole different conversation. So my goal as a coach is to say, hey, I really want to help you, you know, lay these foundational habits and actually be able to live life on your own. And instead of actually just, you know, committing to a short amount of time, like, let's really try and do this. And then you can kind of decide from there what you want to do. So just understanding that no matter what you're trying to take on, it's going to take a lot longer than you probably would like.
Yeah, no, that's
we all need to be reminded of that, no matter what it is, like every single one of us. But
yes, patience is a virtue, isn't it? As they used to say, which I used to hate. But I think the flip side of that is, which I wish someone maybe would have prefaced with me, is that although it takes time moves fast. I mean, it's like we're in 2020 already, right? And we don't really factor that in. So at the same time, it's like, you know, it's going to take some time, but like if you get started now, it's going to be 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 12 months.
Yes.
And then
you have to set little mini goals for people, so it's not just like, hey, give me a year or 2 of your time, let's see what you can do. People are like, okay, no. It's like, hey, like this, you know, I'd like to work with, you know, like we want to probably commit to this, right? But in the next few months, like these are going to be our goals. And then after that, we're going to transition to this. And, you know, people have to have something to look forward to. So yeah, don't just say like, hey, it can take us 3 years to get your body of your dreams. Like that's not going to help either. So don't promise 3 months, but don't promise like 3 years with nothing in between.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think setting expectations is really important. And Laurin, if you could go back then and speak to your younger self at the start of your lifting journey, what are the main things that you would say to yourself, or advice that you would give if you only had a couple of minutes?
Yeah, so I've had a fair share of injuries over the years. Nothing like, you know, incredibly debilitating, but sometimes those are like the harder ones because they're kind of just like the nagging ones. And basically just putting off stuff that I need to do, right? Like not doing proper prehab work, like not doing proper warm-ups, and all the stuff that you don't like doing, eventually will catch up, because as soon as you have one little issue, then you develop compensation patterns. And from those compensation patterns, now you're doing things wrong repeatedly, and you're using things that you shouldn't be using, and then likewise not using things that you should be, and it just turns into like a whole weird nightmare. And then you're like, all of a sudden you wake up one day like, why am I feeling like this? You know why, but you don't want to admit it. And then it takes, a year for something to heal up. That's like not a huge issue. So younger self would definitely take that more seriously. And, kind of listen like, hey, if like something's hurting like that, you just need to like stop.
Good advice.
Yeah. Classic.
Yeah.
Classic old person advice. Like, oh, I'm all broken now. I'm not even old. I'm just broken. But, it's taken a long time. And, I'm finally coming around, but now I just started doing jiu-jitsu and I'm just hurt all the time now. It's just like a chronic injury,
That's like a shift, man. Everyone's getting into that. I'm watching like Nsima, Natty Professor. He's like been doing all that, and I'm like, oh, maybe just like we got some at our gym. I'm like, oh, maybe we should give it a go. The guy's like, yeah, come and do a roll. And I'm like, oh, I want to, but I don't want to. But apparently, it can be quite like not intrusive because it's not like actual impact hitting. It's more about like the grappling and the rolling.
Oh. Yeah, it is grappling. I mean, you're not like getting punched in the face, but unless your partner's
that's always good.
Yeah, not getting punched. I would definitely suggest going to a few classes before you rolled, just to kind of have like somewhat. I don't know. I guess boys grow up kind of different. Like girls don't really grow up like wrestling each other. Like I didn't have any concept of that, right? Like I just go in, I'm like, what am I doing? It's only been a few months, but it's gotten much better. But it is still very interesting. So yeah, younger self, take care of your warm-ups and your prehab and do all that.
Yeah, and good advice. And look, we've all been there and we all try and skip over it, but I think for longevity it's key. And it doesn't have to be super long, it doesn't have to be super short, but
10 minutes is like, that's what I would, literally it's 5 or 10 minutes is like a game changer.
Yes, exactly. So little things. All right. So on to some more rapid fire questions before I ask my final question, Laurin. And thank you. You've been very generous with your time. So just they're a bit more fun. They're a bit more lighthearted. So the first one is, if you had a superpower, what would it be and why?
Oh, Jesus. I don't know. Superpower, actually, this is funny because I have a terrible memory. I could just remember everything that I look at.
That's actually a good one.
Right? I just thought of that. Oh, new superhero. Just remembers everything. Cause yeah, I definitely struggle with that. So like if I'm reading something, it's up here. So that would be my superpower. Yeah. I'm not gonna say anymore. That's it.
Yeah. No, Netflix, watch out. It's called The Brainiac. It's released in 2021. Yeah. It's kind of like Suits, right? The guy, he's almost like he reads shit and he can remember. He's really, I guess it's kind of like a thing. But yeah, that's a good one.
But like practical.
Oh yeah, especially in our industry, that would be great. Cause you just recall and pull out information and be like, yes, it's 0.3 grams of this, and you'd be like, wow.
Yeah.
It'd be amazing. All right. Favorite food. Absolutely favorite food. Favorite
ice
meal.
Cream.
Yeah.
Steak and wine and ice cream. Like that is, just put them all together. Like that'd be a great meal.
What flavor? Ice cream.
So specifically, there's one over here, and it's not really specific, but whatever. It's from a certain grocery store, so you can it's like the grocery store brand. And it's a frozen yogurt, but and it's vanilla base, and there's peanut butter cups, and then there's this fudge swirl, but the fudge swirl is different than most fudge swirls. It's so good. It's very simple, but it's the best. So yeah, anything chocolate, peanut butter, vanilla, that whole deal, sign me up.
Done. Oh, I'm a fan. Gelato. I love gelato, but yeah, sometimes the basics are the best, right?
Honestly, best food. I'm always want ice cream, no matter what time of day. Always want it.
I always say ice cream makes everything better. I'm literally name a situation where ice cream doesn't make things better. Seldom can you find one. I challenge you. Anyway, the guys will be playing that game later. Think of a situation.
Maybe before jiu-jitsu. Probably not.
Yeah, but at the time it'd be good. It'd be start rolling. You'd be like, maybe I regret it. But then if you've got the digestion of a goat like me, you'd be fine. All right. I'm just relentless with this. My last one is, if you could meet anyone dead or alive, who would it be? That's a big question.
I know. I feel like I always get this, and then I always say stuff, and then I'm like, no, that's not what I should have said. It's one of those questions that you're just shit. Somebody's like, who's your favorite musician? You're like, I don't know. And then you say some stupid shit.
And then later you remember all of them. And you're like, why didn't I say that?
Why didn't I say this person?
This is where this superpower would come in handy.
Yes. If I remember everything, I'd have a better shot. I'm trying to like look at my like bookshelf because I'm like, oh, there's probably something over there. So a really impactful book that I read, which a lot of people have read, but Man's Search for Meaning.
Okay.
So by Viktor Frankl. You ever read that?
No, I've not, but I can.
Oh.
I've got a list. Do you recommend it? I'll pop it on there.
It's very good. It's pretty short, but basically he survived like I think 3 different Nazi concentration camps, and he was a psychologist in Vienna. Got put in the camps, survived, and then basically like once he came out, like started like what was known as like one of like the third like types of like psychology, right? Like, so really awesome dude, very introspective, obviously. It's just a really impactful book, and like just the way that like what he took away from it was just so, just read it. It's amazing. I can't recommend it enough to people. And just the fact that, he created this whole different type of psychology, like based off of that. And I'm forgetting the name because I don't have the superpower, but there's a type of like a whole, like the third branch of whatever.
Oh, wow.
And he's just, it's really cool. So
Man's Search for Meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning, yeah, Viktor Frankl. And he's dead, so I would definitely meet him, even though he's dead, because that's allowed in this.
Exactly, it is, because we can do that, and that's what we're about here. No, good. Book recommendations are always great. Reading, knowledge is power, wisdom is freedom. And my last question, a bit more serious, that I ask all my guests, Laurin. Can you identify a fear in your life that you faced, that maybe you continue to face, that you've overcome, what it was and what you learned and took from that experience?
Oh, man, all the feels right now. I would say that having a business, although mine is very small and not the most impactful thing in the world, right? And not like I'm running Google or Apple. But having a business like what we do puts you in a very vulnerable position. Mm-hmm. Every day you could shut down. All your clients could leave. It's very distressing to me, like very distressing. What's also distressing is that no matter how good of a job you do, again, air quotes, somebody could still think that it's wrong because it's all based on personal interactions, right? And it's all how people handle things. It's not like, oh, hey, I wanted this service, I got it, great. It's all up for interpretation. So there's a lot of just anxiety, vulnerabilities, fear based around this. And the easiest thing for me to do would just to be, I'll just do something else that's more stable and more straightforward, I guess. But I've said no, like I know that I've helped people and I can continue to, and with the help of my team and my coaches, we can continue to help even more people. So because of that, and because of the clients that we have worked with, that's what keeps me going. But it is still something that is very scary that I deal with all the time. So I don't know if you could say that I've overcome it completely, because it's still a fear in the back of my mind that all that can just go away. But I think that pretty much any business owner that you talk to, like that's kind of how they feel. So that's something that I continue to face, but want to, and don't just default to my easier, like, oh, I'll just get out of this and do something else.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good one, Laurin. It's really relatable. I know it's relatable for me. And a lot of business owners, is something that's always in the back of your mind. And you go through these phases where you're like, oh no, there is enough people in the world. There is clients, and I can help people. I can do this. And sometimes it's about, I guess, referring back to what you've already achieved and knowing that you are good enough, and not having that almost imposter syndrome where you feel like, wow, am I really good enough to do this? Or what if like one day everyone wakes up and figures out I'm a fraud or something like that? Yeah. It's weird, the mind tricks we play, but again, it's like having that belief, that confidence, that you can do what you do and continue to do it, and you do a very good job of it, Laurin. So thank you for sharing, and thank you once again for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been very insightful. I'm sure the listeners will get a lot from this. Before we go, for people who want to follow along and learn a little bit more about you, where are the best places to go?
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it. You can go to our website, teamlocofit.com. There's a bunch of information on there as far as articles about us, different podcast links, all that kind of stuff. And then social media at Laurin Conlin, Laurin, and then at Team LoCoFit, that is the company Instagram. My YouTube is Laurin Conlin as well. So I basically just type in Laurin Conlin and you'll find some stuff. But Instagram and YouTube are primarily where we put a lot of information, and we have all of our articles now actually uploaded on our website as well. Like I said, teamlocofit.com. So tons of educational material there too.
That's awesome. Beautiful. And as always, guys, I'll put those links in the descriptions below. So wherever you're watching, whether that's Spotify, whether that's iTunes, whether that's YouTube, please click on those links and educate yourself and follow along with what Laurin and her team is doing. It's very good information. So guys, thank you again for listening. I really appreciate it. Laurin, thank you for joining me on this conversation. It's been very good. I've enjoyed it. And as always, guys, until next time, stay fearless.